I know a purple guy. I know of is that the Bite of 87? And yeah, that's pretty much it.
You don't know who Michael is. You don't know who Crying Child is. You don't know who Puppet is. Nothing of that. Okay, yeah, you are pretty blind. You
I've
really
seen Michael
need
Reeves before on
lore.
YouTube. If that's what you're referring to.
No.
Today we end the torment. 19 books, 11 games, 8 whole years, all leading to this moment.
That's a
the
lot.
ultimate FNAF timeline is finally complete. The pieces are in place for us. Now all we have to do is put this story of tragedy, jealousy, and loss back together.
As all good
Hello,
horror
Internet.
games have as a
Welcome
base.
to Game Theory, the show that feels like a kid revealing the class project that he's been working on all year. Except here, it's the class project that I've been working on for the past decade of my life.
This man has been on this game ever since it got released. Like
He just recently released a video on the digital circus and said that this is his next FNAF.
his next obsession. Oh my god.
Gotta admit, kinda nervous. I haven't attempted a timeline video on this franchise since 2018. Back in the days when Mike was the crying child, Afton coming back was actually a surprise, and Fazgoo wasn't a phrase I'd ever thought I'd have to utter. But
What?
since the last time I did something like this, we've had 3 more massive games, the death and revival of the FNAF movie, and more robot kids than you can shake a
speaking
staff
of.
bot at. It is exhausting trying to keep track of this whole franchise, which honestly is why I'm here today. The lore at this point is complicated. It is full of speculation and
Can't
theory.
imagine.
So to hopefully make it a little easier for everyone and to give us all a baseline to talk about this franchise moving forward into the future, it's time to reveal my current working FNAF timeline. But just before I do, I just want to explain a couple of things. First, this timeline is massive. Seriously, it is huge. This thing towers over any video project we have ever done on the channel. But when you look at the totality of this franchise, the story of FNAF
Ash?
really boils down to the story of
I
one man,
watched those
William
videos.
Oh, of course you did.
watched most of those videos as a kid.
Afton. His
And then the
successes,
FNAF
his
4 video
failures, his
happened.
rise to becoming co-owner of one of the most successful restaurant franchises in the world, and his eventual fall to the monsters he helped to create, only to then be reborn in a new digital form later. That's why I've decided to split this timeline into 3 main chunks. The foundation of Freddy's, how the business started and how it came into being, the Afton era, William's decades-long murder spree, and post-Purple Guy. Basically modern FNAF. Everything that happens
Post-Purple Guy?
after the pizzeria simulator fire. And because there are lots of new big revelations in this thing that seemingly come out of
Yeah.
nowhere, as well as just points I want to talk about
Yeah.
further, I decided to dedicate 1 episode to each chunk. I originally wanted it to be one seamless continuous video, but it just felt incomplete without some sort of explanation at the end of each one. Once this whole thing's done, I promise I'm gonna merge all the narrative bits into one massive video so you can just skip my explanations. But for now, this just felt like the best, most satisfying, most complete way to do this. That being said, this is
Okay.
still about the story.
What were you gonna say?
No, nothing. I just said okay.
I thought you were saying okay, like okay. Let me explain this to you, Zero. About like, well, what's going on here? All right.
I mean,
well, I'm just.
he explained it perfectly. The starting of FNAF, how it all started, before what happens before the first game, sister location, the second game, the fourth game, and then everything
Yeah,
else.
all of that means nothing to me. I
Dude,
just
don't
know
wanna
that
spoil you.
I just know that the bear jumps into my face, and then I'm supposed to like fall back and scream and
No,
roll
he
around and maybe
sings
get a
to
bunch of
you.
views. Oh,
He
what?
sings to you, and then he jumps into your face.
Uh,
Okay.
Maybe that makes it a little better. I don't know.
Yeah,
Probably
he
not.
sings your lullaby.
Story, the broad strokes of the franchise. So in order to make
Oh,
sure that you guys know that I'm not
I
just
did
pulling
want to
answers
explain
out of thin air.
something.
Oh my god.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. So if you go back a little bit, the post-Purple Guy stuff, a lot of fans actually don't count that into the main timeline, like I said before we started recording, right? They consider that after the FNAF ended, and a lot of them consider it dumb that like he was brought back, William Afton was brought back, but like it's also part of the lore, I guess. That's
I
all
like
I wanted to say.
how there's this like, oh, the fans consider this to be canon, but like, shouldn't
Yeah,
it be the
because
creator
Scott-
who makes it canon?
Yeah, the thing is, after he made Ultimate Custom Night, Scott Coffin, the creator of FNAF, he kind of gave the license to FNAF to like a big studio. He sold it, So
Yeah, I remember
basically, everything past the Afton era is not made or written by Scott anymore. It's written by somebody else and like continuing it, right? That's why a lot of people consider FNAF 6 to be the final game, or rather the Ultimate Custom Night to be the final game.
Okay.
Because it's written by a different guy
I
and
see.
produced by a different guy.
I mean, I'll keep that in mind, but it is a continuation of the FNAF lore, just written by somebody else,
Yeah,
which is
I
kind of the
guess-
takeaway there.
I don't know if like MatPat is gonna mention it, but there are the books that are written by Scott Cawthon that a lot of people are theorizing is what made the movie and what's making the continuous games. They're using the books as the proper they're adapting the books into the games. So security breach and everything else is just taking the information from the books. But the books are mostly used to like confirm the ideas that people had about the theories. It's like considered a different universe where all of the characters are the same and everything, but it is not the same universe. It's not the same FNAF universe. But a lot of the information that MatPat is going to mention, he found out through the books, through the logbook, through the continuous 6 books. I think there's more now that are on the market that are written by Scott Cawthon.
Okay. Jesus Christ, Kiwi, you're really obsessed with this, aren't you?
I almost bought the books, but
Oh my god. I knew that you could get like this, but like with this series of all things, I didn't expect this.
Most complete way to do this. That being said, this is still about the story, the broad strokes of the franchise. So in order to make sure that you guys know that I'm not just pulling answers out of thin air, not only am I discussing some of the more controversial bits at the end of each chunk, we're also putting in a handy little graphic in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, which will show thumbnails, video titles, books, and any other citations that we need throughout the video. So if you wish to understand that specific statement in more detail, you know exactly where we've taken it from. That way you can look into those details for yourself. So sit back,
I
grab
see.
some popcorn or your pitchforks if you're the type to get upset when I say something controversial, and make sure that you subscribe since this is going to be a video that
Well,
you're going to
there
want to
you
come
go,
back
Kiwi.
to a few times in order to fully dissect. Without any more waiting, I present to you the story of a loving, obsessive father who slowly descended into madness and along the way discovered the secret to eternal life. Our story begins not in the 1980s, or even in the 1970s, but all the way back in the 1930s. It was the throes of the
beginning
Great
of time.
Depression, and people were in desperate need of cheap entertainment, especially in Utah, one of the states hit hardest, 4th highest unemployment in the nation, and full of transients. People looking for work in Salt Lake, finding none, and ultimately moving on to find their fortunes out in California. People were tired and they were hungry, but as they traveled, there was one thing that could lift their spirits. A simple roadside attraction called Fredbear's Singin' Show. The ads were plastered all over town, featuring an animated bear drawn in the popular pie-eyed cartoon style for characters at the time. He resembled cartoons like Mickey Mouse, Felix the Cat, Betty Boop. It immediately said that this, Fredbear's, was a place where you could bring the family. And the price, honestly, couldn't be beat. For 50 cents, you could get food and entertainment as you watched the
Heck
local
yeah.
trained real-life dancing bear perform on stage. Normally, you only got to see dancing bears
It was a real bear? Well, I mean, back then, yeah, you wouldn't expect it animatronics, okay?
I believe that in real life as well, there was like an actual real dancing bear in the older times. That
Oh,
people
I mean,
used as
yeah,
entertainment.
circuses.
Normally, you only got to see dancing bears at large traveling circuses like Barnum and Bailey, where the tickets would go for about $1. That's $1 without food. But this was a smaller show, like the type from the Vaughn brothers or the Robbins brothers, where tickets would sell for just a mere 50 cents. Watching that bear do tricks on stage brought a glimmer of joy at a time
So
when so
fun.
much was wrong with the world. The simple show would go on for years, bringing
So cute.
happiness to hundreds of travelers passing through looking for a quick meal. But it left a permanent impression on one little boy, capturing his imagination in a way that nothing else had. One little boy,
Bear.
Billy. That was his nickname at least, but his parents liked to call him William Afton. The bear could dance.
Purple guy. Oh god.
Oh god.
It's the beginning
The
of
killer.
everything. The bear is the
murder.
problem. If we can get rid
Yeah,
of the
it's the-
bear, everything will be okay.
It's because of the bear.
It could sing. For decades, William dreamed of recreating that moment of bringing a musical bear to life, but how? William was smart, without a doubt, and he had a keen mind for business, but he wasn't the most creative. How do you make a singing, dancing bear come to life? The best he could do was using rudimentary costumes. William was inspired by the work of Walt Disney, who throughout the 50s and 60s was pioneering the use of mascot suits throughout his theme park. The big innovation? Suits with 5 fingers. This allowed the performers wearing the suits to use their natural arms and hands to interact with the guests, as opposed to the older models where the arms would just hang limply by their sides. Finally, with a simple mascot suit, he would be able to realize his childhood dream. He would be able to bring Fredbear to life. To appeal to the kids, and for copyright reasons, he changed Fredbear from a realistic brown animal to a cartoonish yellow bear with a purple hat and bow tie. But feeling like one character wasn't enough, he added another friend, a yellow rabbit with a purple vest and matching tie named Bonnie the Bunny. While Fredbear was certainly his first love, Bonnie was extra special because that was his. It was an original character that he had created from scratch.
His first OC. Bruh.
Probably had multiple OCs, but I think this was his day of discovering that he was a furry. It was his persona.
William. It's kind of wholesome in a way, somehow. Just like a small kid seeing a dancing bear and wanting to make that his life's work so that he can bring the joy of seeing that dancing bear to everybody.
I mean, every psychopath starts out with really sweet ways. Usually, sometimes. Not always, sometimes.
Nah. You gotta rethink those words kind of carefully there, Kiwi.
All of this true crime knowledge and no kind of doesn't support that line, but you know.
Yeah. For the sake of the argument, let's just say that's true.
And I do mean scratch. William's hand-sewn costumes were rough with seams and stitches visibly showing, but it was the best that he could do. And you know what? It was just enough. Bonnie and Fredbear would perform on stage to small but enthusiastic crowds. Finally, he was able to deliver fantasy and fun to all the kids, delighting and inspiring them in the exact way that he had been delighted and inspired so many years ago. And things could have ended there. That could have been the end to his story. It could have been perfect had it not been for one thing. Other people saw the success of his idea. They won.
YouTube monetization.
This is Sniper Wolf. Oh, we were thinking of different things.
Then enter Chica's Party World, a rival restaurant starring performing animal characters.
Wait, so it was all Chica's fault this entire time?
Yeah, it was all Chica's fault this entire time. That's why Chica is like abused the most out of all of the animatronics.
Oh,
that's a joke.
So that's why you hate birds. Gotcha.
Yes, I hate birds. I despise birds. My favorite Chica is the Chica without her beak. That's my favorite Chica.
Idea, except they did it better. William may have been the first, but obviously he wasn't the best. It hurt the prideful William Afton to admit it, but this restaurant was able to do the thing that he always wanted to do, make the animals actually come to life. All of the performers in this restaurant were robots, simple metal skeletons that were powered by battery packs, but all of them able to freely turn and talk and dance on their own, no human required. It was like magic that came from the mind of a brilliant creator named Henry Emily. This Henry, in some small way, had been able to harness the power of life itself. Afton admired him. He was jealous, to be sure, but he also looked upon this man with awe. Off to one side of Chica's Party World was a small cabaret stage featuring an elephant magician. On the other, a hippo known to ramble on and on. That one was more of a joke for the parents, but it was the main stage that was for the kids. A rocking band of characters featuring a yellow chicken thing with a southern drawl named Chica, backed by a band of other country-themed characters, including a pig with a banjo, an upbeat frog from the local swimming hole, and a brown bear with a heavy southern accent. Wait, a bear? But bears were his animals. Why not a cow or a horse? Something to fit the country theme a bit better. Why did it have to be a bear? And adding insult to injury, they had the nerve to call this thing Ned Bear, a direct copy of his own Fredbear.
Oh my god. Bruh.
Disgusting.
Dude, these guys, it's like they just took somebody's YouTube video, reacted to it, and then re-uploaded it. Oh my god. What horrible people.
That's gonna leave a mark.
No, that was not okay. Afton's jealous admiration turned to hardened bitterness. A bitterness that would only grow over the next couple of years as families continued to choose Chica's Party World over Fredbear's. William just couldn't compete with the appeal of the robots. Eventually, his restaurant would go bankrupt, only to get bailed out by, of course, Henry Emily. Another insult, another humiliation that William wouldn't soon forget. 1979. Despite being bitter, Afton couldn't deny that what came next was a period of massive success and expansion. With the two franchises now merged into one, it was the best of both worlds. Afton's ideas with Henry's robotic expertise. The two men.
Okay, well, I mean, it kind of worked out, but when I say worked out, that I also know where this ends up leading to, so.
Okay, so there is something that I know differently of from what MatPat is saying right now. from my knowledge, Afton was the mechanic, Henry was the programmer. He programmed the animatronics. I would call them animatronics. Animatronics to like dance and sing and react to voices, and Afton made them. That's what I know, but I guess it's different. I haven't read the books. I only know it from the games.
Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't exactly like explicitly stated. He did mention that Afton was like a super smart person. So, I don't know.
Decided to launch under a new name, Fredbear's Family Diner, a pizza chain that would eventually come to feature a mix of humans in performing suits as well as on-stage animatronics. They decided to stick with Fredbear as the headliner, considering the yellow bear was easily identifiable as a brand and because he was the original performing animal mascot. Afton appreciated that. This new restaurant would also see a mix of characters as the two franchises merged into one, with Pig Patch and Happy Frog performing right alongside Fredbear and Bonnie. And as part of this one big Fredbear family, they even got themselves official merch that were released, ranging from masks to magnets.
The crappy Mr. Hippo fridge magnet?
Sorry, Gregory.
That said, not all the characters were winners. The reception to some characters was just
I
mediocre,
think you would like
so they faded
Mr.
away.
Hippo.
Mr. Hippo? I don't
Yeah, I
really
think you
know
will really
much
like
about Mr. Hippo.
He's
I
like
just
an old
remember...
man. He's
Oh,
like an old
really?
man that just randomly starts. If you're playing Ultimate Custom Night and you put him in and you don't pay attention to him, he will just crawl through the vents and jump scare you, and then you'll be stuck in a 5-minute clip of him just talking about what Orville and him did that day.
What?
And you can't skip it.
No! The worst jump scare of all! Just kill me! Oh
Yeah.
man, that's kind of
There is
funny.
actually some more bits that he drops that he really randomly. Scott even tells you like you should not pay attention to what I tell you, and then he drops something more important through Mr. Hippo.
So they faded away into the dumpster, storage units, and retro budget tech stores of lost nostalgia, waiting for their chance to step back into the limelight if and when a headliner went out of commission. Others, though, would fare much better, like a new Pirate Fox, as well as a blue guitar-playing variant of the yellow Bonnie Bunny. Ultimately, the franchise would get so big, it would spawn its own cartoon show, Fredbear and Friends. Business was booming. In the end,
Heck yeah.
Fredbear and Bonnie's popularity would be so strong that they would be able to support the Fredbear's Family Diner franchise all on their own, while also spinning off a new sister location dedicated to their friends. In
Sister
1983, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza launched, giving a dedicated home to all this new supporting cast of characters. Chica the Chicken, Bonnie the Blue Bunny, Foxy the Pirate, and of course the headliner, a brown Freddy Fazbear. Business was good, and Afton was happy, mostly. It did bother him that
The color of the bear's hat and bow is really important because Freddy's are different depending on what color hat and bow they have.
Okay.
So the golden Freddy has a black hat and a black bow. Then you have the brown golden Freddy who has a purple hat and a purple bow. Then you have the normal brown Freddy with a black hat and a black bow. You have to remember that. That is very important.
I see bear. I say bear. It is bear.
it did bother him that the one original character that he created, the one that he himself played, Golden Bonnie, got passed over for inclusion in that cartoon show. The only character in the roster of regulars to get ignored for the show, but other than that, things were going smoothly. He had himself.
Look, man, it is what it is. Sometimes you might be the one who makes the channel, but you're not the favorite on the channel. I understand you, William. Maybe I should start my William Afton arc soon.
No, don't. Don't give up, Zero.
He had himself a wife, 2 sons, a daughter. He had a thriving business. And best of all, he was able to learn the craft of robotics from the man that he both loved and hated, Henry. Together, they were constantly pushing the limits of what these characters could do. Because it was quick and easy, new characters introduced into the roster would be given a simple hand-sewn suit with 5 fingers that any performer could wear. Eventually, Henry would design one of his signature animatronics for that character, utilizing a divided mouth with either a hinged or sliding jaw design. This was the first generation of animatronics. But why why stop there? Afton had big ideas. What if the animatronics weren't just locked to the stage, but could freely roam the restaurant and interact with kids? What if his mascot suits could become animatronics? What if you could use more than just rigid metallic skeletons? Why not experiment with tubes and wires that would give the animatronics fluidity and flexibility while still providing structure? The possibilities for this technology were endless. Afton fell in love with robotics. He had started with a dream of bringing one simple singing bear to life, but with robots, he had stumbled across the tools that gave him the ability to control life itself. And thanks to Henry, he was practically speedrunning his way to an engineering degree. And while William wouldn't admit it out loud, one other thing that kept pushing him forward was the desire to beat his former rival, to prove himself smarter and more.
Oh man, William. Oh, that's unfortunate. You could have had a happy dream of singing dancing bears.
The problem with William is that he's kind of too prideful. He's prideful even in death. Not even death can do pride in him apart.
I think this guy's spirit gets like attached to one of the animatronics somehow. That's like something I think I know. I don't know if that's true, but...
To surpass the man who everyone else considered to be a visionary genius. But pride cometh before the fall, and tragedy was about to strike. Okay, so that brings us to the end of part 1 of the story. That said, at the end of each of these chunks, I want to break down some of the logical leaps that I made, since the more narrative format doesn't give me much of a chance to justify a lot of the big decisions. And admittedly, there are some large leaps in here. Let's just start off with Fredbear's Singin' Show, shall we? We know, based on the retro poster that was hidden in Security Breach, that at least at one point, Fredbear was an actual bear. And like I called out in that narrative segment, dancing bear shows were a real form of entertainment. The only problem is that, timing-wise, none of our main characters would be the people in charge of that business in the 30s and a series of pizza restaurants in the 80s without them just being extremely old. Best case scenario, if Afton's running the Singin' Show when he's 18, that still puts him at nearly 70 when the first pizzeria opens and his murder spree begins. That just doesn't make a lot of logical sense because he doesn't become immortal until his first death in Springtrap. That's why I suspect that Fredbear's Singin' Show was either a family business that Afton then carried on to a new generation, or something that he saw as a kid and just wanted to recreate when he grew up. The Fredbear Singin' Show thing also starts laying the groundwork for some of the core elements of this story, that Freddy's was a place of fantasy and fun, and that Afton, despite eventually falling to become the heartless serial killer and mad scientist that we know him as, began...
Excuse me? Am I actually going to go on a William Afton arc?
Hopefully not. Please don't.
This is the evolution of my mad scientist persona. Yes.
Like, I really want to talk about what I know, but I kind of don't want to spoil you, but I kind of do want to spoil you and talk about it, but...
We're gonna get there eventually, Kiwi. Save it for those videos.
Began as someone with good intentions and a love of entertaining kids. He wanted to bring things to life from the very beginning, a theme that recurs a lot for him throughout the rest of the franchise. Next up, let's talk about those mascot costumes. One thing that I keep going back to is the design of Glitch Trap. It's a handcrafted suit. You can see the seams and everything.
Yeah.
It even has 5 fingers for the performer's hands. It is very much not a Springtrap suit. This is something much more rudimentary. It came at a time before animatronics were a part of the story. That's why I suspect that it was actually the first, predating literally everything. It's also a suit that is very personal to Afton. He put his digital consciousness in that form. It's his personal avatar. It's the way that he sees himself.
It actually is his persona. I thought you were joking there, Kiwi.
No, I was not. Afton is fundamentally a furry.
There's also a whole separate discussion to be had here about the habits and rituals of serial killers. So the fact that he's choosing to lure kids and kill them in this particular suit actually says a lot about his emotional attachment to it. So while Fredbear seems to have started as someone else's creation, Golden Bonnie was uniquely Williams, giving him a personal connection. And that's not all. In this whole franchise, only one set of characters have themselves 5 fingers, the Nightmares. Even Golden Freddy, Fredbear was a 5-fingered wearable suit at one point in the story, as we see in this shot from the graphic novel, before he, like everyone else, was turned into an animatronic. This seems to imply that all of the main characters had similar wearable mascot outfits at least at one point in time, and that whoever is having the FNAF 4 nightmares, if they even are nightmares, something that we'll touch on in part 2, saw those mascot suits specifically.
Oh, no.
Lastly, we have to talk about the elephant in the room.
I have no idea what's going on there, but I guess we'll talk about it when we get there.
the literal elephant, Orville Elephant, as well as the rest of the mediocre melodies. For a while now, I've suspected that the mediocre melodies played a much more important role in the story than just being a bunch more animatronics to fill out the roster. Especially Ned Bear, which is just so suspiciously close to Fred Bear. And yet, there are two key details that we're gonna have to justify with any mediocre melodies mention. One, they're very rudimentary with external battery packs, implying that they come very early in the timeline. And two, we know that at minimum, Mr. Hippo does eventually become an official member of the extended Freddyverse. But if these things are supposed to be cheap, generic rip-offs, why would you be trying to rip off yourself? You wouldn't. You would be stealing someone else's ideas. So if Afton created Fredbear, there would have to be some rival franchise. The only other person who would likely be ripping him off? Henry. We've talked extensively about how the mediocre melodies are clearly Henry's design aesthetic, so it just has to be him. I don't think Henry's doing this maliciously. He doesn't strike me as the type. He was likely building the robots at the orders of someone else that was running a rival restaurant franchise. But that's enough motivation to start Afton down a path of jealous rivalry, but also begrudging admiration. As the Freddy Files Ultimate Edition says, it's important to revisit the beginning of Henry and William's relationship, so here you go. I think this is where it begins. Also, this is future Matt Pat here coming back to add this one in. Seems like the recently released character encyclopedia has backed up all of this speculation. I've had this timeline written for about a month now, but I've also been holding off a bit to see what wrenches this character encyclopedia might throw into it. And on this particular point, I gotta say, it seems like we might actually have nailed it. They actively call out the suspicious similarities to the main Fredbear crew. Quote from one of the pages: Ned Bear looks like an imitation, altered just enough to avoid copyright issues. I don't know about you, but that seems to imply that we were right on the money. Knowing all of this, at one point the franchises had to have merged. That's really the only way that you get Mr. Hippo from the rival franchise as part of the Fazbear crew. This also mirrors a lot of what happened in the real-life history of Chuck E. Cheese, with two rival restaurants, each with their own casts of characters, merging to become one unified brand. Again, we've gone into that in detail.
I never understood Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, they're very ugly and scary looking.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense why Five Nights at Freddy's exists. If you saw this, you would think that it's a horror game too if you had to, like, you know, stay there at night and these guys are just staring at you.
Detail with other videos, just wanted to remind you all of that here. But why would I call out the rival restaurant as being named Chica's Party World? Few things actually. First, we know for a fact that a location named Chica's Party World exists. It is mentioned in the source code teasing sister location.
Oh my god. Now this I know. People are so into this, and I mean, well, people. Matt Pat. I do know in some of his previous videos, I think I watched them. I don't remember them very well, but I do remember this fact of him going into like the source code and like trying to look for things that are mentioned.
Yeah, I believe that he put it, that Scott Coffin put it into a game once, and after that he started putting it in almost every game that he made. No, every game that he made, not almost every game that he made, he put something in the source code related.
I know that a lot of other video games do this as well, especially for a game like this with super heavy lore that's all in the background here. It's just really fun to kind of like look through and figure things out. And a lot of great content from Matt Pat.
What is it called? FNAF World? Yeah, FNAF World. He put, so there is like this whole going on thing that started with 4, where at the end of 4, if you get the true ending, there is a locked box that Scott said that he'll open after like somebody figures out what FNAF 4 is about. In FNAF World, he put the box as opened, which meant that he gave us all of the information that we needed to open the box, but apparently nobody has figured it out yet. What inside of the box was, which means that FNAF lore is still not over. We're still missing details about it.
In the source code teasing sister location, so it is out there somewhere and doesn't fit cleanly anywhere. Second, in the story The Puppet Carver, Chica is very explicitly looped in with the book versions of Pig Patch and Ned Bear, implying that she started as a mediocre melody. Thirdly, her design just fits better with a theme of down-home country animals with southern accents playing the banjo and eating with bibs. And with her being the headliner of the show with her name on the restaurant, it would make sense then that when the restaurants merge, emerged, she was the one that was added to the main cast of characters while all the other mediocres faded away. It's also why when Freddy's closes after William's killing spree, she's the one to branch back off into her old franchise and is therefore missing in Sister Location, a detail that's bothered me for years at this point. It might also explain why William decided to stuff his first dead kid into Chica. That one was—
What? Excuse me? He did what? Okay, William, I see you.
That one was Henry's creation, not his. Is all of this a big leap? Yeah. Is it connecting a lot of dots that are very spread out across the franchise that I've been holding on in the back of my mind for years?
Wait a second. The first kid that he killed was Henry's daughter. The first kid is the puppet, not Chica.
I mean, I don't know any of this. Comment section confirm?
Absolutely, but I think it makes sense. It also serves as a clean answer to a lot of the random threads that Scott's been leaving dangling for years. So with all of that in mind, my friends, we can close the book on the foundation of Freddy's. And don't worry, next week I'll be back to give you arguably one of the most confusing parts of this entire timeline situation, part 2, the Afton era. I promise it will actually be next week this time. No more waiting around. I am just as eager to get this one out the door as you are to watch it. I promise. You know what else I promise? I promise that we'll actually get to talking about the games. I would have liked to have talked about them in this episode, but there just isn't that much in the games that helps us depict anything pre-Family Diner. Although, let's be honest, this franchise has never been just about the games anyway. Even back in the early days of FNAF, we were decoding images and source code that Scott fed us through the website. The modern day books and the clues that we get from those things, now they're just modern extensions of that. All of it is crucial to understanding this franchise and its lore. Unless, of course, Steel Wool finally gets around to making that Fredbear's Family Diner game they want to make so badly.
I've always would love to do is get kind of back to, I have no clue if we'll ever be able to do this, but getting back to kind of like the origin of like Fazbear Entertainment, or the origin of Freddy Fazbear.
But in the meantime, while we wait for that inevitable—
Is Steel Wool the company that Scott sold it to?
That I don't know anything about. I just know that Scott is not the creator of FNAF anymore.
I mean,
he's not making any more
he's still the
games.
creator. He's not working on it
Yeah,
anymore.
you know what I mean.
But in the meantime, while we wait for that inevitably cryptic game, I hope that this start to the timeline helps to fill in some of those gaps. I'm excited to share part 2 with you next week. If you haven't subscribed and rang the bell, make sure you do it now so you're notified when that part drops. I cannot wait to see your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, I remind you, it's all just a theory. A game theory. Go
He
easy on
said
me.
it.
Tried my best.
It's a shame that you
Alright.
didn't get anything to theorize about.
We're kind of setting up the basis and just learning about the origins of everything, really.
Yeah, about the origins of Afton, I didn't know much about. And the rest I won't spoil you because that's where shit starts going down real hard. This is like the first episode of, like, this is like the first half of Oshinoko.
As somebody who knew nothing going into this, it's always nice to see, like, stories that are written before things happen so that you give characters that, you know, are doing particular things within your story proper motivation to do those things. And like you can understand the reasoning behind why they've done the horrible things that they've done. William wasn't like born evil, but this man was just very prideful, and then all these situations occurred causing him to go down the route that he has, which I'm assuming leads to, well, it was mentioned during this video. I'm not gonna say it because of YouTube, but it's all because of a singing bear.
Yeah, depending on how the second part goes, you'll either hate Afton or you kind of sympathize with him and then come to hate him later.
So at the end of the day, we're just gonna hate him.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna hate him. I kind of like how Afton is written. I don't like his actions, but I like how he's written. I think he's a pretty good villain on the basics of it. He's a bad person.
That's always good to hear, right? Because like everybody loves Dio, and Dio is just a piece of shit. But like you love him because of how he's written. So if Afton can reach something even close to that, then I would say that's a win.
I'm excited.
I don't know how to feel. I'm kind of scared, to be honest with you. But yeah, if there were any particular facts that aren't correct in the video, then please do let us know in the comment section, because I don't know anything, and Kiwi's memory is somewhat unreliable. Although she is very obsessed with this series, so I don't know. We'll see.